Hello, everyone. I'm Gigi Godwin, President and CEO of the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to today's virtual business accelerator on how to do business with Montgomery County, presented by Ash Shetty, Chief Procurement Officer and Director of the Montgomery County Office of Procurement, joined by Grace Denno. The Business Accelerator will present a very high level of information about Montgomery County, Maryland's Office of Procurement, including how to engage with the office. There are various socioeconomic programs, local, minority, wage requirements, etc., as well as their processes and recent accomplishments. If you're interested in doing business with Montgomery County government as a vendor, this webinar is for you. The slides and audio from today's webinar will be sent to you via email after today's presentation. And I'd also like to say joining us today are the incredible members of the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce team. We have our Director of Marketing and Communications, Alexis Reed, and our Manager of Events and Membership, Megan Foy. Thank you for being with us, and they'll be very integral to making this a success today. We'd like to begin with some poll questions so that we can hear from you as we get started this morning. First of all, the first poll question is, where is your business located? All right, our next question is, do you have locations outside of Maryland? I see we're still getting, okay, very good. Next question is, do you have locations outside of Maryland? Please select one. All right, and now, and the answer is yes. So we have a lot of Maryland, Montgomery County, but we also have many with locations outside Maryland. Terrific. Our next question is, in which industry is your company? Construction, nonprofit, association, professional services, healthcare, others. In which industry is your company? Construction, nonprofits, professional services, other. All right, thank you. And our next question, to get a sense of the size of your companies, your current number of full-time employees. That's our next question. Current number of full-time employees. This will give us an idea of the size of your companies. Okay. Most of you are under 50, but we also have attendees in the other categories as well. Thank you very much. All right, and does that complete our poll questions for now?
Yep, that completes it for now.
Okay, wonderful. And now it is truly a pleasure to introduce Ash Shetty. Ash serves as the Chief Procurement Officer of Montgomery County, Maryland, where he leads a team of approximately 40 sourcing and compliance specialists. Ash and his team are responsible for a portfolio of more than 2,600 contracts exceeding $5 billion or more in value. Prior to his confirmation as the Director of the Office of Procurement in Montgomery County, Ash served as Vice President at Gartner, where he worked with Chief Procurement Offices of large multinational organizations to address critical functional challenges. Prior to working at Gartner, Ash was a senior consultant at Ernst & Young. So Ernst & Young, of course, we all know as well, and are in this area and nationally and internationally recognized. Ash received a degree in business administration from Georgetown University and studied international management at the University of Oxford. As you can see, you're in very good hands. And so with that, I will turn over the EXCELerator program to Ash Shetty, who will introduce Grace Denno, who will be co-presenting with him. Thank you.
Thank you, Gigi. Good morning, everybody. My name is Ash, and I will try to keep the next half an hour or so as interesting as I can. I also want to introduce Grace to you, and I will introduce her by way of a joke, which is always a bad idea when you're trying to make a good impression. But Grace is my number two. She is the division chief for our business relations and compliance division within the Office of Procurement. So if you're interested in our local business programs, our local preference points, if you're interested in the minority female disabled program, even our living wage law or prevailing wage law and the enforcement of those programs, Grace is the person who you would be talking to. It is her division that is responsible for all of that. If you have, any softball questions, you can direct them to me. But anything more intense, you'll see me looking away from the screen, and that's usually Grace's cue to start talking because I'm clearly out of my depth. The joke that I was going to share has to do with Einstein, and during the days when this is obviously before internet and social media, he would go around to universities presenting his theory of relativity and whatnot. And he had the chauffeur who'd drive him from university to university. And one evening when they were driving back home to Princeton, the driver says, Mr. Einstein, you say the same stuff over and over again. I think I could do your speech and get away with it. So Einstein, having a sense of humor, said, you know what, next time we go, you're going to present. You just mess your hair up a little bit. People think you're me because that's all people know about me is that I have messy hair, which, by the way, I happen to share in common with Einstein. But then they go to this college, I think it was Rutgers or somewhere, and the chauffeur goes up on stage. He delivers Einstein's speech just fabulously. In fact, he did such a good job of it that he ended a couple of minutes sooner than he should have. And so, just as he was about to leave the stage, the professor who was hosting it says, "Oh, Mr. Einstein, Professor Einstein, since we have some extra time with you, we'd love to open it up for Q&A." And all of a sudden, you see the driver freak out because obviously that was not planned. And sure enough, one of the professors stands up and asks this really intense question. The driver takes a giant gulp of water with the bead of sweat dripping down his forehead. He says, "Professor, I'm surprised you asked that question. It's such an easy question that my chauffeur sitting in the back seat over there should be able to answer it." And that, of course, was Einstein. So if you have any tough questions, I am going to point at Grace and she's going to answer them. But for all the easy stuff, I'm your man. Grace has a presentation deck that we prepared that we would like to share with you. And what I'll do is walk you through this deck relatively quickly. The idea behind sharing this information with you is just to give you, as Gigi put it, a very broad understanding of what the Office of Procurement does. But as I promised Gigi, I will then get into more details about what opportunities are currently available, what you need to do if you want to participate in one of our solicitations, basically just give you all the information you need so that as the opportunities present themselves, you are able to become one of our vendors. You're actually able to get a contract with us. I also want to just quickly thank Gigi for giving me this opportunity to speak with all of you today. Gigi is definitely somebody I didn't frankly know before I started working at the Office of Procurement. Candidly, most of my work with Gartner kept me on the road. I actually used to spend 200 nights a year at Marriott properties. In fact, I achieved their lifetime platinum status not once but twice. So I expected that they would give my son a lifetime platinum status as well, but that never came to be. So if Marriott's on the line, then you should think about people like me. But once I got to know Gigi, she's somebody who I turn to more often than I expected, more often than you would expect, for advice, for counsel. She is a friend and a confidant and somebody I'm always happy to be there for because I know that she will, and she has been and will always be there for me. Okay, with that said, let me tell you a little bit about the Office of Procurement. I love the fact that we updated this to roadmap to FY23 because till last month it said roadmap to FY22. But let's show you what the Office of Procurement is up to in the next, let's say, 10 minutes or so. So the first slide will just give you a quick overview of the different things that are happening and we are expecting to get involved with in the course of the next year. So the local small business reserve program is something that is of a lot of interest to folks. In order to participate in this program, you need to be registered with our office as a local small business, which means you are based in Montgomery County, Maryland. We have very specific criteria that would allow you to be recognized as a local business, but for the most part, it has to do with the majority of your employees working out of your county-based office, or the majority of your revenues coming from your county-based location. The amount of money that we spent with them, as you can see, is no small amount. It was $129 million in the last fiscal year, which came up to over 27% of our eligible spend for it. Sort of jumping to the right-hand side, the other program that a lot of folks are interested in. Now, keep in mind, there's a good bit of overlap between our minority female disabled program and our local program, but they are entirely separate programs. It just so happens that a lot of our local businesses also happen to be minority or female owned. And so for that reason, there is overlap there. But this is a subcontracting program. It is older than the local small business reserve program. And you'll see here again, very close to 27% at $200 million spent with minority, female, and disabled owned entities. In a couple of slides, I'll talk to you about which organizations can certify you so that we recognize you as minority, female, disabled, but just another really good program. You know, I've put this number down here mostly just as a point of pride. We have seen geometric increase in our year-over-year savings since I took seat. This wasn't even a metric that was measured by our office in years prior, so it was funny to even try to capture it in the beginning. We had to define what savings meant. But as you can see, we continue to see that geometric increase in savings, and I think that getting that savings mindset ingrained in county employees is important because that is what allows us to stretch those taxpayer dollars and get more value for our residents and businesses in the long run. On the bottom left-hand side, what you're seeing is what we are proposing for FY23. It's ambitious. It's one of those experiments, if you will. I can't commit to the fact that I'll get funding for this or that it'll actually pan out for me. But one of the things that I'm aspiring to do is to hire somebody to now focus on sustainability, green procurement. And I don't just mean that we are going to procure using less paper, which we've already switched to e-procurement during the pandemic, so that is happening. I'm talking about really making sure that we are keeping environmental impact in mind as a philosophy behind procurement for the county. There are many ways by which we can try to get assistance for funding such a position. Rather than having folks do the side of desk, I want to make this a center of plate type of item. So similar to the local small business, the minority, female, disabled, you will also start to see an emphasis placed on green procurement in the years to come. All right, let's look at the next slide. So this is just to give you a sense of the types of procurements that the office is engaged with. You have your invitation for bids. This is relatively straightforward, your request for proposals, which are the more subjective, where you would actually be submitting a proposal as opposed to simply quotes in the IFB. And then the REOIs, which is equivalent to an RFI, but it's a request for expression of interest. An RFI, of course, is request for information. Any solicitation under $100,000 and over $10,000 is considered an informal solicitation. All that means is that, first of all, as of April of last year, it would be reserved under the local small business reserve program, essentially giving local businesses first right of refusal for those sub $100,000 contracts. If we cannot find a suitable vendor, we would obviously move it to into the non-local pool. It has a more streamlined process. It allows us to expedite the process of buying services or goods that cost the county less than $100,000, as opposed to anything over $100,000, which is considered a formal procurement, which would be required to advertise that, listed for a month, versus the informal solicitations, which are only required to be listed for a week, although we find the average is about 3 weeks, 15 business days. So those are the two different types of solicitations that my office is involved with. But then there's at least $70 million on an annual basis that is spent as a direct purchase order, a DPO as we call it. Those are the procurements under $10,000. Those actually don't come through my office. They go through the departments do these directly, and they're done under the authority of the using department's directors. As I say all this, there's one thing that I should say, because a lot of people meet me and fall into the impression that I make the decisions of what contract goes to whom in the county. I wish that sometimes were the case, but the truth of it is it would be entirely dangerous to have one individual decide which vendors get what contracts. So the way procurement is done in the county is in a decentralized manner. There's a qualification and selection committee that determines who gets contracts. They do it by reviewing the RFPs that are submitted. My office simply makes sure that they followed due process, that they had a fair and transparent procurement process. And ultimately, they send a recommendation to my office of the vendor they've selected. That vendor is then brought under contract. Obviously, if you were to participate in a solicitation, if you won the contract, then you'd be working with us to get it finalized. If on the other hand you didn't, you could ask the department for a debrief so that the next time that solicitation comes around, you can come in stronger. Or if there's another jurisdiction that is soliciting those services, you can strengthen your application by learning from what didn't work out for you with us. And again, if ultimately this was a situation that led to a protest, then my office would investigate to make sure that the solicitation was in fact fair and transparent. So that is a little bit about the different types of procurements that we have. I'm going to spend only a couple more minutes and go through a few more slides, and then I want to jump onto our website because I do want to show you some of the resources that you have available before 10:45. And obviously, I also want to make sure that we've left some time for Q&A with you all. So this tells you about some of the different programs that I touched on when I was introducing you to Grace. You've got the Minority Female Disabled Owned program. This is something that is a subcontracting program where depending on whether this is constructions or professional services or goods, there's a specific quota that is set aside for various different minority groups so that we can make sure that they are receiving the planned, the gold amount of work in contract dollars. So for instance, and Grace can give me the specifics so we can pull it up on our website even. In construction, you would expect a 21% allocation to your minority female disabled subs. And then we track that over the course of the contract to make sure that that is in fact happening. By the way, that is what led to that $200 million sum that we showed you on that first page there. Local Small Business Reserve Program, like I said, it's a set aside. When we have more than enough competition in the local pool for a particular good or service, it makes a lot more sense for us to first set it aside for local businesses to compete for it and provide those services to their local government. Again, all contracts under $100,000 over $10,000 automatically fall into this bucket. The local business preference points program was something that came to be only in the last couple of years. In fact, it was enacted in the middle of COVID. Gigi and the Montgomery County Chamber were huge allies in helping us get that law passed through council. But basically what that does is, for any business based in Montgomery County, when you submit an RFP, you automatically get 10% of the points for being a Montgomery County based business, which again, if you weren't based in our county, you would not get those points. In the case of an IFB, it basically, for lack of better explanation, gives you a 10% handicap, which means that if you were the lowest bidder, but not based in our county, and then there was a local business that bid but was within 10% of you, they would be the awardee. Even though your bid was technically lower than theirs, the local business would get that 10% handicap. So as long as they were within 10% of the lowest bid, we'd keep those tax dollars in our local economy. The local business subcontracting program simply has to do with contracts over $10 million, where there is a 10% subcontracting requirement for local businesses. What I can tell you is that a lot of our contractors, because the minority female disabled law requires a subcontracting quota as well, will try to double up. So they will usually try to find a local minority owned business to get that particular to get those quotas taken care of. They get their local and their minority female by one vendor. Otherwise they'd end up, in the case of construction, for example, having to sub out 31% of the work. One of the things that Grace and I have imagined for this coming calendar year is we have these monthly open houses. They happen on the third Wednesday of each month. So we had one yesterday, for instance. And again, during the pandemic, they're happening virtually. They're like a 10 a.m. event that happens on Teams. But what we're trying to do starting this year is actually have a segment in those open houses called Meet the Prime, where we're going to invite various prime contractors to come and talk about what type of work they do for us and what type of work they like to subcontract. And this way, besides getting business directly from the county, you might get to meet a prime, who's interested in working with you as a subcontractor for them to be able to meet their goals with us. The wage requirements law has to do with our services contracts, where we require a minimum wage of $15.40 be paid to workers. We simply want to make sure that our contractors treat their employees fairly and provide them with a living wage. And the prevailing wage law has to do with construction, and that is where we make sure that folks who are working on our construction sites are getting paid for the level of work that they bring, that they perform. So those are the various programs. These are all under Grace's purview. If you have very specific questions about these, definitely speak to Stein's driver. Here's just some information about the type of outreach we do. Obviously, we're so happy to participate in events like this because these give us a new audience base. They give us a platform to talk to more folks. But we hosted an annual, we host a reverse trade show every year. It is something that we started during the pandemic. While everybody is in this terrible wait and see pattern of figuring out when things are going to open up, we wanted to give people a bit of a periscope view into what is coming down the road in terms of Montgomery County procurement. So rather than having vendors tell us what they can do in these reverse trade shows, we actually have county departments telling you what we intend to buy in the next year and a half. And what that allows you to do is get your ducks in a row and be prepared to take advantage of those types of solicitations that otherwise might have passed you by. We hosted one in December of 2020, and then we hosted another one this past December, all of which is archived and saved on our website. And they're broken up into smaller videos so that it's not overwhelming, because the event itself is many hours long. We host monthly open houses. We've been doing this pretty much since I started working at the county in 2019, and then we started doing these online these open houses immediately after that. But obviously, once the pandemic hit in April of 2020, we switched to a virtual format. So since May 2020, these have been hosted virtually, and many of them can be found. Many of the information parts of those can be found on our website as well. If you're ever interested in, for instance, a deep dive of how to register to be a vendor, or a deep dive on how the RFP process works, there's all these process maps and videos about those that we had covered during open houses, but we've archived them on our website now. We participate in virtual events just like this. We have a weekly newsletter that we send out. You're welcome to subscribe to it. Just gives you information about opportunities coming up. And obviously during the pandemic, we've had to up our outreach efforts via social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, etc. Okay, so here's just some of the resources that I mentioned to you. I don't want to spend too much time on this page because I really do want to show you the actual page, but what you're looking at here are just some of the cool tools that we've added to our website. We actually entirely redesigned it, in the spirit of not letting a good crisis go to waste. During COVID, it became apparent that our office's front door was not going to get used as much as our website, which would become our new digital front door in the metaverse, if you will. And so what we did was created rooms within our website, like a vendor resource room, where you can actually come in and understand the different tools that are available to you. An entire archive of videos, because it occurred to me that people are more into watching. I don't know if you know this, but apparently TikTok has now overtaken Google to become the world's most visited website, which is sad commentary on us as a society, frankly. But at the end of the day, I wanted to not miss that trend. And so we've got these short videos that give you instructions on how to do things, which is what you see on the bottom right-hand side. On the bottom left-hand side is one of our process maps. This is the RFP process map. In the spirit of transparency, not only do I tell you who's involved in each step of the process, and if you look at this in detail, you'll notice that procurement office is actually not always involved. It's very often just the department. But we've also highlighted using colors how long each step in the process will take. But if that isn't enough information for you, on the top left-hand side, you can see our solicitation tracker, which basically just tells you where a given solicitation is. And if the solicitation is already closed, it marks it as such. Otherwise, you can see in that example on the top left-hand side, when it's red, it means that particular step is going behind schedule. I'd be lying if I said that even before COVID, we didn't have situations that caused delays. Obviously, during COVID, we have even more so. But this is a transparency tool, in my opinion, that just shares with you information about where your procurements are if you are worried about them. And then on the right-hand side is contact information for folks in my office. So if you're not happy with what the tracker is telling you, we're not trying to hide behind it. You can actually email that person directly based using the information provided on the right-hand side there. But that's, again, I'll try to show you this stuff on the website because it's better to look at it where it's housed rather than on a screenshot. But just so you know, we're working on a bunch of stuff there. Again, a couple of tools that I think you will find interesting. In fact, Grace, if you wouldn't mind at this point, because I did want to at 11:45 actually pivot to the website and just show some of the resources there. Would you mind bringing us to the website, and then we can maybe come back to this deck later? I just want to make sure that we don't miss the opportunity to showcase the website itself, because there's some good stuff in here. Okay, so yeah, I think that view is better. I don't know if folks can zoom in and actually get a clearer view. I can, so I'm assuming others can too. But I wanted to show you a couple of resources on this website that I think you will find interesting. First and foremost, just the calendar of events that is front and center. When I came up with the idea of putting a calendar up on our website, people told me it was innovative. I found that amusing because calendars have been around since Julius Caesar, I think. So I find it funny that it's seen as a way to innovate. But the truth is, yes, telling people when things are happening and putting it out there does provide an extra layer of transparency, and it's a form of communication that is easy to relate with. So this calendar gives you a good sense of what is coming down the pike. But even beyond that, I wanted to show you some of the little tweaks that have made this website that much more intuitive. So for instance, if you're looking at the solicitations page, which is basically telling you what solicitations are going to be forthcoming, what you're going to find, and if you click on the formal solicitations, Grace, what you're going to find is this is a list that if she scrolls down, you'll see these are all the solicitations that are available for you to participate in. That is well and good. But for a lot of folks, they don't really know what building engineering equipment and general maintenance services means. So if you now click on the view scope button, what you will find is that there is a paragraph that actually extracts from within the solicitation exactly what the department is trying to buy. So instead of having to pull up an entire solicitation, read about our MFD laws and the various regulations that apply, this paragraph will give you a sense of whether or not you want to engage in this particular solicitation. It gives you all the details, the actual address, a lot of information that would make this apparent to you whether this is a solicitation you're interested in or not interested in. Now, if it is something that you would like to pursue further, instead of having to download the entire solicitation, which by the way, you are welcome to do at any point, you could just download the scope pages. So again, what this does is instead of making you read 100 pages of a solicitation, you would literally read the 8 pages where they're specifically telling you what they're looking to procure. If after reading this section, you're like, you know what, I definitely want in on this solicitation, then yes, you're going to have to understand what it means to get involved with Montgomery County, the prevailing wage law, for instance, if it's construction, or the wage requirements law. Those are all things that you'd have to understand. But in terms of just deciding up front whether or not this is a solicitation that is for you, these 2 buttons that didn't used to exist before, I think will make your life so much easier in terms of deciding whether or not you want to jump into the rabbit hole with us. Now, if we zoom back out again and go back to the landing page for our solicitations, a couple of things that I want to show you very quickly. The solicitation tracker, as you can see, it's sort of sitting there like a little Google search button. But literally, if you were to click into this, if it was an active solicitation, you could enter its number, or you could enter what in particular you're looking to buy, looking to sell to us, and it will show you pertinent information. Grace clicked on what I'm assuming is a random example, but this appears to be a solicitation that's already completed. You can see it completed on time. The various dates are marked there. If this was a bid where it said proposed awardees, you would have probably gotten the bid tab where you'd have seen the different participants. And obviously you can email folks, as you can see on the right-hand side, the information is available. This is equally helpful in my opinion for a live solicitation so that you understand what's happening if you were one of the bidders, or even in an archived situation, because you can at least get a sense of what happened and who the contacts were, who you could potentially reach out to if you needed extra information. Besides that, I also wanted to show you all the projections page. The projections page basically gives you a sense of all the upcoming solicitations that are, again, the one thing I should say, when I suggested this, a lot of the departments had a lot of consternation because these aren't things that we've committed to. These are things that we intend to do. Unlike the solicitations page where the solicitation is actually active, the projection is simply based on what we anticipate our needs to be, us trying to signal to you what is about to come down the horizon. So I always say that this comes with a giant disclaimer that you cannot hold us to these. But I think it is better to put what we think we're going to be buying out there so that you can get your ducks in a row, rather than just throw them up on the solicitations page out of nowhere, give you 1 month to respond and say that's it. But this is another one of those enhancements that I think you should find very, very useful. You can obviously filter it depending on what you do. You can query it, as it were, and get a sense of the work you're trying to get done. Okay. The last resource that I want to show you, and by the way, this is just chock full of interesting stuff, and you should find time to peruse our newly designed website. But the last thing that I would want to show you is the vendor resources, because that section is something that was brand new in 2020, I guess. It gives you just very simple guidance on what you need to do. If you're a new vendor, It'll show you how to introduce yourself. It'll show you how to register yourself with us. If you are looking for basic knowledge about the workflows that and Grace is prompting me. See, she's really a backseat driver if you think about it. That I should talk about how to get certified as a local small business. It is important if you're a local business to get that certification, because besides the preference points, there's just a host of other opportunities that are set aside for local businesses. But then you see in the middle, the solicitation process maps. This is what I showed you before, the IFB and the RFP mapped out. So you can see what the processes entail, who's involved in each step, how long each step should take, and obviously that in complement with the solicitation tracker. So as you can see here, the little key on the left-hand side, if something is green, that means it takes less than 2 weeks. If it is yellow, it means it takes about 2 weeks. And if it's red, it takes more than a month for that step to be completed. And then, again, these are steps like risk management that you really cannot shortcut, or you don't want to. If it is a step that is marked with the rectangle, then it's something that is worked on by my office. If it's a triangle, it is being worked on by the department. But you can see these different symbols just signal who's doing what and how long it should take, which is helpful, I think, for anybody who's about to embark on this journey with us. And again, we have a similar process for the RFPs, which, to be honest with you, is even a little bit more long drawn, because there is actually a qualification and selection interview process that gets baked into that, which in an IFB, which is just quotes, is not part of that process. Okay, you also have access to videos, which are on our homepage, but something that I would strongly recommend that when you have a chance, take a look at, and make sure that you are, you're just, if there's something that you're curious about, that there's a video that you can watch to learn about it. It saves you the trouble of reading through our handy dandy pocket guide. We have translated that pocket guide into multiple languages. I think we stopped after we got Chinese put in there, and we have Spanish and obviously English as well, if you want to read through this stuff rather than watch these videos. But as you can see, there's a lot of videos here. Okay, now before I jump into that presentation deck, I want to very quickly show you the mcipcc.net, which is the website that you would use if you wanted to register to do business with us. This is probably the equivalent of complaining about never winning the lottery, but never actually having gone and bought a lottery ticket in the first place. If you haven't registered to do business with us, then you are definitely not going to get to do business with us, because this is your foot in the door. And the good thing about this particular portal is that not only does it put you on our radar, Montgomery County governments, it is also where Montgomery College, MCPS, the schools, Housing Opportunities Commission, everybody, Parks and Planning, everybody is using this as a place to find vendors when there is a solicitation opportunity available. There is a very good video on our website that shows you the keystrokes involved in registering your business. It is something that I would strongly encourage you to take a look at. So at this point, Grace, it might make sense for us to go back to the presentation deck. Obviously, I know that this may feel like you're drinking out of a fire hose here, but I think some of those tactical resources that I've just showed you on the website are resources that you can go back to at your leisure. You can take a look at them, and hopefully they will help you acclimate. They will help you find whatever it is you need within the resources available to do business with us. But obviously, Grace and myself, our contact information is at the end of this presentation, and we are going to be resources for you beyond the Q&A that we will take in a couple of minutes. So let me just jump forward a little bit more and show you some of the other resources that are embedded in the slide deck. Again, I wanted to jump into the website because it made sense with the flow of the conversation, but I do want to show you some of the other information that is in this deck. So here is some of the work, and again, you'll notice from where this goes, we're kind of making a bit of an abrupt turn here. So I'm glad we jumped onto the website before this. But here's just a few examples of the type of work we do, and this just honestly speaks to the breadth of involvement that the Office of Procurement has in Montgomery County government. But here what we're talking about is our involvement, which by the way continues to as recently as this morning, the COVID response and recovery efforts. So one of the things that you can imagine happened right as soon as COVID exploded onto the scene was a lot of our processes needed to be bent or adapted to give departments more flexibility, to give the government more flexibility to tackle this pandemic. So even though this isn't stuff that is sexy, behind the scenes, my team was working really hard to create a certain amount of flexibility while still maintaining controls, because at the end of the day, these are taxpayer dollars, and there's no shortage of stories of people who took advantage of the pandemic for nefarious purposes. So my office really had this sort of interesting line to toe. On the one hand, we were trying to move fast. On the other hand, we were trying to make sure that nothing reckless was happening. We were getting a deluge of vendor requests, people approaching us with all sorts of different masks and these atomizers that would put sanitizer into the air so that the surfaces in the room would be sterile. We had people trying to sell us ventilators. We had people trying to just help, but it was hard to tell who was actually there to help and who was there to cause harm. In the end, we sifted through more than 2,000, but to be honest with you, at some point we stopped keeping track because people were texting me information instead of coming through the official channels. But it was probably closer to 2,500 different solicitations. The county never fell short of PPE throughout the crisis. Were there times when we couldn't hand them out like candy? Yes, absolutely. But for the most part, we had become the backstop for nursing homes, for early childhood development centers, for obviously schools. We continue to provide them with COVID testing, the rapid test right now, and also the hospitals. I would have monthly calls with the CEOs of 5 hospitals where they would tell us about the types of things they were in need of, and we never really ever had a situation where we could see the wall at the back of the storage room because we had completely run out of anything. We were always able to find them. And that is a testament to the staff at my department and at various other departments, our network of folks, including folks like Gigi, who was always helpful to us with connecting us with the right contacts. But it definitely was an interesting time. And it continues to this day, by the way. As recently as this morning, I've received information from folks about the rapid tests, because we can't seem to have enough of those to be able to facilitate just simple things in life, like meeting our grandkids or friends. One of the interesting things we did during the pandemic was we actually worked with retirement communities to gather CPAP machines. This ended up ultimately not being needed because our county is one of the most, in fact, it is the most vaccinated county in the country. County above a certain size, I believe 300,000 or more. But what's really interesting is that in the beginning of this pandemic, there were these horror stories in Italy where they were trying to decide who gets to live and who gets to die based on who would be allocated a ventilator and who would just have to honestly perish without it. So knowing that CPAP machines in a pinch could serve as substitutes for ventilators, again, we're talking about life or death situations where there's nothing else left. So at least let's try the CPAP. But my team was actually able to round up more than 80 ventilators. In fact, when we boxed them up and we sent them to the hospitals, we almost labeled it saying, do not open this unless the worst happens. But it was was a high mark for us, where in the middle of a pandemic, where all options were out, you could get nothing out of China because their ports were completely just, gridlocked. We were still able to do things that were creative. They were thinking outside the box. When we couldn't buy hand sanitizer, we started working with a compounder to make it ourselves. So we were mixing, there was a formula available for it, but it involved hydrogen peroxide and ethanol, and we literally were distilling our own hand sanitizer at a certain point. And obviously, even in terms of keeping an eye on the broader economy, we were able to partner with some of our vendors to make PPE available to local businesses. It was one of those things which, in April, May, where everybody needed PPE. Imagine if you were a plumber trying to go to a nursing home where you knew there were cases of COVID, but you were just working with us with those 3-ply masks, those disposable things. It was harrowing, and I knew the people who had access to the masks and had supply chains coming out of Turkey and China and Bangladesh. And I also knew the businesses who were in dire need of this type of PPE. So we worked it out such that we had some of our vendors selling PPE to businesses at the same prices as they were selling them to us, to those local businesses. So there was no gouging happening. But it allowed us to keep this economy going. Again, I mentioned that all local small business, all solicitations under $100,000 are part of the local small business reserve program. That too was done in an effort to help. For a company that's on the verge of shutting down, that $80,000 contract might have allowed them to stay open another year till the end of this pandemic. And so, we just did our part to try to keep things going. Flipping over to the next page. This is just a look at what is the sort of the current state of procurement, if you will. You can see that we spend on a yearly basis just over $1 billion. This is over 8,000, now over 9,000 procurement actions. That is the number of requisitions that are cut against or purchase orders cut against those contracts. Obviously, there's been an increase in contract modifications because of the pandemic, which you see tracked in the number below that. You can see our specialists are doing more with less. Although I would say candidly, e-procurement and those types of tools have allowed us to do more with less, but it's still a testament to their work ethic and their can-do attitude that we still have all 4 wheels on the road. I should say at the start of this, when Gigi said that I manage a team of 40, during the pandemic, that number, we saw a lot of attrition. Departments like fire and rescue and finance were still able to hire because they were considered essential. So we lost people to those departments. So we're now down to closer to 25 people. But we've still been able to keep the wheels on the road. We've still got things moving. You can see the time to issue solicitations, however, did go up because of all the issues we had. But at the end of the day, we feel like we are in a good place. We have a roadmap moving out of the pandemic, and that is what matters. The next few slides are mostly slides talking about our staff's work beyond procurement and some of the awards that we've received. And I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I do want to acknowledge this because the one thing people in government are really good at is taking ourselves for granted and just fixating on the criticism that we receive. Sorry, Grace, go back to that previous slide. I do want to talk about the innovation program for a sec. The county has this really interesting innovation program called the Innovation Accelerator. It puts us essentially through Six Sigma Green Belt training. So it allows us to learn the tools and techniques that drive efficiency without adding any additional costs in terms of technology or manpower. As a percentage of the team, the Office of Procurement has put more people through the Innovation Accelerator than any other office in the county. Besides that, we've had folks on the team like Bethany, who many of you might have worked with, helping out with our racial equity program, working with Tiffany Ward, who's the county's chief equity officer. Sharonda, who works on my team, focuses on things like women in government. Karen DeLuca made sure during the pandemic that we were all sane with things like wellness events, just virtual yoga, virtual art. These things just like the rest of you, we also find ourselves very overwhelmed when certain situations arise, and it's just we've as a team we've had to come together to deal with that. Okay, now let's talk about the awards. We received a good bit of recognition in the last couple of years despite the pandemic. Pam Jones, who is one of my division chiefs, received a Manager of the Year from MPPA. Sarah Giambra, who is a buyer, specifically focuses on IT, won the Buyer of the Year, which is really cool because these are large organizations with many professionals part of the membership. I was recognized in June of last year by the Chamber as a partner, and then there's some national awards as well that you will see on the next slide, like the recognition we got from the NACO for the various innovations we brought to bear. And then, of course, we also won the National Procurement Institute's Annual Excellence in Procurement Award, which is actually a very prestigious one. I've had my former clients call me up congratulating me for that one. So clearly we're doing some things right here. Okay, so that is the meat and potatoes of what I wanted to share with you. On this deck, which you will receive, are also links to the various resources that I highlighted, everything from mcipcc.net, which is how you register to be a vendor, to the vendor resources page on our website, to the projections, to the newsletter. I believe that also contained in here is contact information for folks in our office. That's on the next page. And so, yeah, for each of these programs, if you want to get a hold of somebody, their information is here. Although my information is not here, it is on our website. So if you ever want to email me directly, it would be exactly what everybody else's email address is, except it would be my name, ash.shetty@montgomerycountymd.gov. And again, I'm always happy to chat with folks, take your feedback, make things better, make things easier for you. But at this point, I think, in the interest of being fair and not rushing through the Q&A, we can pause here and do a deep dive into anything you want us to do via Q&A.
Great. So Ash, we have a few questions that have come in. The first one, just going back to what you were saying about the CPAP machine, someone said they wanted to understand the CPAP machines were used in place of ventilators.
So, not the question I was expecting, but happy to answer it. No, so as it turns out, if you don't have access to ventilators, a CPAP machine is a substitute. It is a suboptimal substitute, but it is better than nothing. And so what we did is we rounded up these CPAP machines, and there's a long story behind why we realized they were available. It had to do with I believe Medicare provides them, they update them every couple of years, but very often the old model is the exact same as the new model, and the old model is working just fine. So people actually had them stashed away. And during the pandemic, they were happy to give them to us. Now, the thing to keep in mind is that these were never used. They were a great effort. They were one of those quote unquote thinking outside the box type of situations. But luckily, those CPAP machines stayed in their boxes. They're probably languishing in the basement of each of those hospitals right now. But we collected them simply because we had heard those stories from New York City and other countries where people were literally, saying, if you're above 80, you don't get to have a ventilator, because honestly, we'd rather give it to somebody who's in their late 60s who's in need of a ventilator. And those are these cruel decisions being made. We figured at least if we ever had to make that decision, at least we had those CPAP machines on hand. Then again, that would not have been my call, obviously, but we wanted to think ahead. As opposed to wait for it to happen, we were trying to get in front of it.
Great. So now we have some questions about how folks can use the procurement website. So the first one is, how can they find out if they're already registered as a vendor?
That is a great question for Grace.
Yes. So our vendor registration system we showed earlier, the address is www.mcipcc.net. I will type it into our chat box later. When you are on that website, you can do a search and put your own company name in there to see if you're already registered with them. And of course, if you have your profile or your ID and password, you can also try to log in and see if you already have a profile there.
Also, I'm told, and Grace can correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of vendors also use that as a resource because they can find companies to subcontract with. So the same way you'd search for yourself, you could potentially have a prime searching for you as well.
Yes, there is a search function also to search for vendors. You can search vendors by name and also search vendors by their commodity, either goods or services that they're providing.
Great. Now here's a question. My wife and I operate 2 different companies that want to start selling our services to local government. How can we market and promote their company, my power washing services and my wife's pressure washing equipment and supplies to local facilities?
So there's many different things you can do. First of all, if you have 2 different entities, you should make sure both of them are registered. Make sure that the correct codes are used so that when solicitation opportunities present themselves, you receive a tickler that, hey, the solicitation opportunity has risen. Besides registering, if you're a local business, obviously make sure you go through the process of registering as local as well. Your wife at least would have the minority female designation. One of the things that I, by the way, didn't do in my haste while showing you the website is show you the entities from whom we recognize certification for the MFD program, and we will definitely do that. But you want to make sure all that registration is entered correctly, because again, it just gives you more opportunities. But besides all that, we also created this vendor innovation portal. It is a way for businesses to introduce themselves beyond registering to county government. And I crafted it personally. I crafted it based on best practices from my prior life. But not only does this give you the opportunity to tell us what you do, but it challenges you to explain what you do in the context of the matters that are relevant to the county. So how will you save us money, for instance? Or how will you do something that is better for the environment? How would your service improve inequity when it comes to race issues? It just, again, you don't have to have an answer for all those questions, but it creates a platform where you can sell yourself to us. And obviously those responses are sent directly to the departments that typically buy those services. So we would take your input into the VIP, the vendor innovation portal, and we would use it to introduce you to the folks in the various departments. And in your particular case, because some of the work you do might be part of other larger contracts, I would also encourage you to participate in our open houses. I would encourage you to try to connect with some of our primes who would love to have you be a subcontractor to them, because the type of work you do very often might even fall into their contract, and they would be delighted to meet their quotas by having you be part of their ecosystem. And if I've missed anything, Grace is obviously definitely welcome to chime in.
Yeah, off my head, I think there are at least 2 opportunities you can pursue. One is for all the ride-on buses. They will be on a nightly basis cleaned up in 3 different locations. And then whoever that's maintaining or cleaning those buses definitely need the power wash services and the equipment. So that's something that you could potentially be a subcontractor to. And another one is all the recreation pool cleaning system that the recreation department, as well as our DG at General Services Facility Maintenance Department, have these pool cleaning services as well as equipment contracts. So all of these opportunities would be posted on our solicitation website. Sometimes you will not see specifically saying we need power wash equipment because, like Ash mentioned, most of these are embedded in, they were just saying bus cleaning services. But then part of it definitely would be power wash services. So you can be subcontractor to all of these opportunities. So I guess the best way like Ash said, register through our open house, so you can come over and actually talk to the specific buyers who will help the department to purchase these services. Then you'll get a chance to see when the solicitations are out and who are the incumbents and how to become a subcontractor to them.
And Grace, would you mind quickly flashing to the page which shows the different entities that would allow us to recognize you as a minority female disabled? I mean, just speaking from memory, it would be MDOT, it would be SBA, the Small Business Association, it would be WeBank, it would be the Veterans, the Department of Veterans Affairs, which is the newest one we just added, because we realized that that when we had 5, we had a lot of organizations that allowed us to recognize you as minority female disabled, but having 6 just gave more people the opportunity to participate in this program. And then we also have the Capital Region Minority Supplier Development Council to round out 6. It used to be 5 till last year, but now it's 6.
Yeah, and then to chime in on that, the 4 public entity type of certifications by the VA, MDOT, SBA, Federal SBA, and City of Baltimore. Those 4 are free of charge. They may take a little bit of time. Usually the benchmark is between 3 to 6 months to get, from the time you submit your application till after they did all their review. They may do site visit, they may do interviews to the owner. Then when you get the certification, it could be up to 6 months, but they are free. These 2 organizations are nonprofit organizations. One is Women Business Enterprise National Council. They certify only women businesses or women business enterprises. And then the Capital Region Minority Supplier Development Council certifies minority businesses. Both of these will have a membership fee, but at the same time, they do go through a pretty rigid certification process to, so you will also be able to get certified by these entities too.
All right, thank you, Grace. What other questions do we have?
That's really great, because we had a couple of questions that were around that issue of, if we're certified here, do we need to be certified through the county through another process? So that's helpful. We had a couple of questions that are also in the same vein of, I'm just going to condense these questions into one question, which is, if they are located outside of Montgomery County, their business is outside of Montgomery County, can they still do business with Montgomery County?
Yes, so a couple of things to be very clear about. So this page is about getting certified, and you can see the goals, by the way, that I referred to earlier also at the top of this page. But this page is about the minority female disabled program, and we don't certify people as such. They are those entities listed there do the due diligence for us. We trust them. We have vetted their processes and accept that as being sufficient to meet our standards. The reason why these standards matter is because they create a level playing field. Otherwise, you'll have a whole bunch of folks self-certifying and taking business away from folks who actually deserve it. The local programs, the local Small Business Reserve Program, the local Preference Points Program, all those programs are certified by our office. Michael Brown, whose email address is provided, would do the certification for you. But remember, not every single service that we need can be provided, at least at the level that it needs to be, by a local business. And while our strategic goal is the overall enhancement of the economic environment in Montgomery County, it doesn't mean that we do that at the expense of meeting our taxpayers' needs. So if as you can see, only 27% of our spend is with local entities, which means the majority of our spend is actually with non-local entities. So to answer that question, absolutely you can participate if you're not based in Montgomery County. We still invite you, we encourage you to participate. Competition is in our best interest. The more options, the more innovation that we can access, whether from within or without the county, is in the county's best interest. But keep in mind that if you were to participate in a solicitation and you're not based in Montgomery County, if there were local participants, they would have they would have that handicap that is afforded to them for being based in Montgomery County.
Great, thank you.
If you look at our current solicitation page right now, for example, there's only one solicitation that is reserved for the local small business reserve program. Every other solicitations are open to everybody, except like Ash said, if one of the bidders are a local company, then they would get that 10% preference points for these other solicitations over the non-local businesses.
So the next question, this person asked, what types of professional services are most available for bid?
That will be IT services off my head that we get a lot of questions about our IT services. The county has two sets of biggest IT services that's available for all the departments to use. We call them the Montgomery County consulting and technical services contract. And one set of it are reserved for only local small businesses, and that one already was awarded recently, and we had 12 local small IT companies on that set. And another set is for Montgomery County, all the using departments to use as IT services, consulting, technical services support, and a lot of times staffing, IT professional staffing services. And that is going to come soon within the next couple months. And we will be looking for 8 different IT services companies for that contract. And of course, besides IT, I'm sorry, of course, we have all kinds of other professional services we would be looking for. IT would be the biggest part. But for example, if you look at this current solicitation list, this disparity study is one of the, like a professional consulting and almost legal services that we will be looking for. And also at the same time, we always look for maybe auditing, CPA type of services, legal professional services. So all kinds of professional services we would be looking for.
Great. So this next question goes back to something Ash said about the Office of Procurement having a TikTok page. For things such as TikTok and other short format videos, does the county have needs to contract businesses for video production, or is it something that's done in-house?
So generally, our department works on a shoestring budget. It is frankly a miracle that we still operate. But the way it happens, we've just learned how to do these things in-house. It sounds really scrappy, but that's what we did. Sharonda specifically connected with folks within the county who have these skills and learned how to do this. I know that other departments will sometimes leverage the PIO for this type of work because the Public Information Office has these capabilities. There are resources within the county that are generally used. And I'm sure that there are some departments that maybe contract this work out, but my suspicion is, and Grace can correct me if I'm wrong, that these would be done via the DPOs, the direct purchase orders, because these wouldn't be very large productions. These would be relatively small, sub $10,000 sort of project-based work on an as-needed basis. It would probably fall into the bucket of the smaller groups like the community engagement cluster, groups that are just trying to engage with people. Sometimes they need work done in different languages, so they might bring in that outside help for production. But Grace, maybe you have some more specifics there. I can tell you for ourselves, unfortunately, I would love the help, but I can't afford it.
Yes, so our office does have a full-time outreach and marketing program manager. Bethany does a great job managing all of our outreach efforts, including the open houses, the procurement fair, organization, our newsletters, our social media, and any, she also does the liaison work with the Public Information Office for the county. So whenever we have a new program or a new feature, we would work with the PIO office to do a news release so that the public would know. So like Ash said, we don't have that much budget in terms of operation and other fancy things that we'd like to do. So Bethany is actually the person I would lean on whenever we want to do more public information outreach.
Thank you. So this next question, can a Montgomery County business send in an unsolicited suggestion or contract proposal for new technologies for the county to consider?
And you can do it either by reaching out directly to the department, because again, remember, I don't get to make the decisions on what we buy. The two things I wish I had the power to do, one is give people tickets when they drive recklessly on 270, and two is decide who gets contracts in the county. And sadly, neither is in my job description. But you could reach out. So this idea, it sounds like it's meant for what is now newly branded TEBS, Technology and Enterprise Business Solutions, which used to be the Department of Technology Services. Sure, feel free to reach out to Gail Roper. She's extremely accessible, or to one of her division chiefs, depending on whom you have you think this is relevant to. But you could also use our vendor innovation portal to put that suggestion out there. My candid experience working with this county government for just under 3 years now is that it is a much harder sell, frankly, to sell them on a new idea and then to get them to put a solicitation out for it than it is to honestly respond to the solicitations that are going to be put out. Like in the IT space, Grace alluded to this, but the big Mcat's contract is about to be solicited this year. This is going to be a giant opportunity, a once in a 5-year opportunity to be involved in our ecosystem. We will select 8 non-county, well, I shouldn't say non-county based. It is open to county and non-county based businesses. The winners could ultimately still be county based businesses. But that would be the more immediate opportunity. Definitely, though, if you have ideas, the vendor innovation portal is a great way to do it. Talking directly to them just bypasses the innovation portal, but you still get the information in the hands of the right business partner. But I can tell you candidly, I don't get to make those decisions.
So we had another question come in, which is, what is the Mcat contract and where do they find information on this program?
Yeah, so MCAT is the one that we were talking about, the IT contract, IT services contract for the whole county using departments to use. It will be coming soon. It includes a lot of IT related services in there, consulting, technical support, IT staffing. So right now, we currently have 8 current contractors on that contract. It will expire soon. That's why we're expecting the new solicitation to come out. So one thing I would recommend is to keep an eye on our formal solicitation page. Once that's out, it should be on this page. It will be on there at least for 3 to 4 weeks. That's the minimum time that it will be posted. If you are interested in seeing what was the requirements for the last time around, then there is a tool you can use, which if you click on solicitation and you can go to contract search. And under contract search, you can search for that MCAT's solicitation from last time. I'll just show you how to do it. If you click on filter, then add another criteria, change the contract description to contains. I know this is a lot of steps, but if you just do, let me see, MCCAT, consulting and technical. Consulting, sorry.
Also, you could look at the more recent LCAT solicitation to get an idea. And in the reverse trade show from this past December, the department, the TEBS department, I don't want to go through their unabbreviated name one more time. The TEBS department did a 1 hour long presentation talking about exactly what they're going to be looking for in the MCAT. So you can watch that video. Obviously, that's going to be close to 45, maybe 50 minutes long, but that'll give you a much more detailed understanding from the horse's mouth.
Yeah. So if you look at, after I put this criteria in there, then these are the most recent contracts that we signed. You can try to download. Here it says documents not available. Then you can contact Sarah Giambra, that's the buyer. This is her phone number and email address. Ask for the solicitation that we issued last time for this contract. Then you will see what are the requirements. And these are the current incumbents of this contract. If you look at,
I know that we're at time, Grace, so it might be a good idea for us to follow up on this. And this way folks can get that link sent to them. Yeah. But from my part, I just wanted to again thank Gigi, Alexis, and Megan for allowing us this time today.
Thank you so much, Ash and Grace. What incredible opportunities. I know I learned a lot, and we have so many companies here that frankly are in the federal IT space that may be very interested in some of these opportunities. A lot of them are our members. And so that I didn't realize that opportunity was coming. So I, again, learned a lot of important things today, including that. But as always, we want to thank you for a great partnership. We work with you throughout the year, and we have for many years. And we think you've made incredible, great change and progress, improving opportunity, access to opportunity for our small businesses. So we thank you for that. We thank you for today's presentation. And then I'd like to say to our participants today, thank you so much for joining us. You chose to spend your time with us, and we appreciate that. And we hope that this was helpful. And we suggest, watch your inbox. We've got more accelerators on the way. We've got some great programs with some of our member companies that are, I will just give you a hint, large and headquartered here in Montgomery County. They do business with our small businesses as well. But also we want to prepare you for some upcoming events. We have a great, an event coming up with NOAA. Are one of our federal partners that we work closely with. We've got a NOAA Industry Day in May, and we will be sending out information about an accelerator to prepare you for doing that event, which should be in person. By the way, the NOAA event will be. So there are a lot of great opportunities here in Montgomery County, and leading the way for us with the county government are Ash and Grace. Thank you again for your presentation. Thank you everybody for joining us. And watch your inboxes for the information that Alexis will be sending you. With that, wishing everybody well, stay safe, stay healthy, and we're wishing everybody a very successful and prosperous year. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.